colonial powers are desperate to get involved. Now here's something concrete to back that up. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, outside the Libyan embassy in London.
The unrest in Libya is continuing to have an impact around the world, with oil prices rising. The Spanish government is bringing in measures to cut fuel consumption. Sonia Gallego explains.
There's a change of pace happening on highways throughout Spain. Across the country, drivers are being encouraged to ease off the pedal, and it's all in aid of conserving energy. The unrest and uprisings experienced in oil-rich Arab countries have meant a surge in the price of petroleum, spelling trouble for countries dependent on imports.
Well, we are pretty sure, because we have made a lot of studies on dealing with this problem, and our conclusion is that we save at least 0.7 liters per 100 kilometers.
Around 80% of the country's energy relies on imported oil and gas. That's a fifth above the average for the entire European Union. So for the next 4 months, the speed limit on Spain's highways goes down from 120 kilometers per hour to 110. That, says the government, will reduce oil imports by 5%, saving the country just over $3 billion.
Well, Libyan oil currently accounts for just over 13% of Spain's demand. And while Spain's oil supplies are in no danger just yet, the reduction in this national speed limit is just one of the ways that the government is trying to get people to cut down on fuel. And that's a scenario that's not been seen in this country since the 1973 oil crisis.
Also approved increased use of biofuels, a modest reduction in train fares, and subsidized tire exchanges. But with a sluggish economy still struggling its way out of the recession, the measure hasn't exactly been welcomed with open arms, with many seeing it as a ploy to distract the country from other problems.
I think that there are more important things that the government should be concerned with, and they shouldn't be wasting people's time and money on this.
It is laughable. It doesn't really contribute anything to the economy in general, if that is what it's about.
While oil prices remain high, the debate goes on over what alternatives there are for Spain's energy consumption. A sign of the times in an increasingly shaky climate. Sonia Gallego, Al Jazeera, Madrid.
The exodus from Libya goes on. In a single night, boats carrying more than 1,000 illegal immigrants arrived at the southern Italian island of Lampedusa, the calm weather facilitating the journey. They've escaped the unrest in North Africa. Here's Tanya Page.
Boats crowded with people hoping to make a better life in Europe. This annual wave of illegal migrants from North Africa is predictable and unstoppable, and this season is promising to be busy. In just one night, boats carrying more than 1,000 people landed in the Italian island of Lampedusa. Most are Tunisian and Egyptian. Authorities fear many Libyans will follow.
So far we have contained the impact well, despite the very high number of migrants. We've had more than 1,000 people arriving overnight, and we've welcomed them at the holding centre. Fortunately, we had only 314 migrants to start with, so the numbers have stayed beneath a critical level.
Thousands of illegal migrants have arrived in Lampedusa this year. In February, over 4,000 Tunisians landed during one weekend of fine weather. The island's holding centre has a capacity of about 800, so they're quickly ferried or flown to larger detention centres in Italy. But some locals worry about the effect on tourism.
I hope they don't go around breaking things and misbehaving, and let's hope that tourists will still come this summer. Otherwise, this year will be very difficult for us.
In my opinion, people are afraid of Gaddafi, of what's happening in Libya and the war taking place in the Mediterranean. It's not a question of the migrants. Migrants have been coming here for 20 years, and we've never had problems with tourism.
Tunisia and Libya have agreements with Italy to prevent illegal immigration, but both have far greater concerns right now. Italy has asked its European neighbours for help, but many have refused, saying it's too early to predict migrant numbers. Tanya Page, Al Jazeera.
We'll be back a little later in the programme, but for now, let's go back to Doha.
now to Egypt, where the Prime Minister Essam Sharaf has appointed a new caretaker cabinet. Ayman Mohyeddin is in Cairo. Let's get more on all this from him. Ayman, tell us about this new cabinet, and are there many new faces in it?
Well, surely the cabinet just a few minutes ago, those images of them taking the oath of office in front of the head of the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, Field Marshal Mohammed Hussein Tantawi, indeed will have some new faces, mostly 5 key positions, including the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which has gone to a respected former judge and a senior diplomat, Nabil al-Arabi. Also the Minister of Interior, the Minister of Justice. Those were among the most important and the most sensitive ministries. They are going to be new individuals assuming those posts. It will also have some familiar faces, including about 19 ministers or so that served in the previous cabinet under Ahmed Shafiq, who resigned a few days ago, and one in particular, that of the military industry, Sayed Mishal, who also served under President Hosni Mubarak. So it is certainly a cabinet that has a lot of old faces, but in the key positions of the Ministry of Interior, Justice, Foreign Ministry, and a few others, including the Prime Minister, they are all new individuals, well-respected individuals, many of them, their names being brought forward by the protesters and the groups that made up the January 25th revolution.
Yeah, I was speaking to a woman who was campaigning in Tahrir Square a short time ago, and she was particularly pleased that the post of Interior Minister had been replaced. This means that presumably that this cabinet is going to be largely welcomed by the protesters.
That's right. You know, when you talk about the Minister of Interior, General Mansour al-Aisawi, he's certainly an individual who is very well respected. Although he did serve in previous government posts under the former President Hosni Mubarak, he was also at one point the governor of one of Egypt's most sensitive governorates, that of Minya, because throughout the 90s it saw a lot of so-called terrorism-related violence that he was asked to subdue. But certainly he earned a great deal of credibility with people in that governorate and across the country. In fact, some speculated it's what led him out of office. Several years later now, he is asked to rebuild the Ministry of Interior, rebuild public confidence in the security services here. But he, along with others, including Nabil al-Arabi, including the Minister of Justice, were names that were widely accepted and widely respected by the protesters. And that is why you are seeing in these key ministerial posts new faces. They're expecting them to be very important roles as this country tries to undertake some substantial and genuine reforms, not just simply cosmetic ones.
And from the protests that we've seen recently outside state security headquarters, it's becoming clear, isn't it, that people don't just want change, they want justice, they want accountability for the kinds of things that security forces did under the old regime.
Absolutely. You know, justice is certainly one of the most important demands of the protesters. But when you talk about justice at this particular stage, it's very difficult to ascertain to what degree it permeated the government.